Number 15. Creeper Ghost. Inside their home in Bucktown, Chicago, Jack McKercher and his girlfriend, Jordan Branskis, were oblivious to an uncanny incident that had happened overnight. It all began with a missing purse, sparking a minor argument between them. Jack insisted she left it at the restaurant they'd eaten at the night before. Jordan was not so sure. Determined to resolve the dispute, they decided to review the footage from Jack's home surveillance cameras. They fast-forwarded through mundane moments until the clock rewound to 3:30 a.m. on Monday. What they uncovered was chilling. In the grainy black and white footage, a figure in a white hoodie appeared at the top of the stairs. Jack asked Jordan why she had been standing at the top of the stairs in a white hoodie before they went to bed. But it wasn't her. The realization hit them both. An intruder had been in their home, standing over them while they slept. The chilling footage showed the figure moving slowly, methodically, like a ghost. The couple had fallen asleep on the couch, their 2 dogs nestled at their feet, completely undisturbed by the intruder's presence. The stranger stood there for about 5 minutes, walked off, and returned to stand over them again for 5 minutes more. They watched, horrified, as the man moved silently through their home, his face obscured by the hood. The man, dubbed the Creeper Ghost by local media, had eventually left without a trace, except for the haunting images captured on their surveillance camera. It wasn't long before they discovered that the Creeper Ghost had struck other homes in the neighborhood. On social media, residents shared eerie images captured on doorbell cameras of the suspect riding through alleys on a bike, trying to break into homes. The police stepped up their patrols, and the neighborhood buzzed with heightened vigilance. Cameras were installed at every corner, capturing every movement in the hopes of identifying the elusive creeper. Jack and Jordan, once safe in their Bucktown home, now lived in a state of fear. To this day, the Creeper Ghost has never been found. Number 14. Screaming for help. At around midnight on November 12, 2019, the area surrounding the 3000 block of 3rd Avenue in Los Angeles was about to be jolted awake. The cause? A chilling sound that no one could ignore. A woman's desperate, blood-curdling screams for help. "Help me! Someone help me!" she was heard screaming. The sound was so intense, so raw, that it sent shivers down the spine of anyone who heard it. Within moments, calls flooded the Los Angeles Police Department, with residents describing the urgency. One of the key pieces of evidence came from an outdoor home surveillance camera. The LAPD released footage captured by a camera on the front porch of a nearby home, owned by a woman who had been standing on her porch when the screams started. The camera's audio was clear, capturing the terror in the screaming voice. But what was even more alarming was what the video showed next: a car speeding away from the scene. Initially, the vehicle was thought to be a Toyota Prius, but further analysis suggested it might actually be a 2003 to 2008 Toyota Matrix. The video showed the car tearing down the street, its headlights blurring into the night as it vanished from sight. The woman on the porch was shaken. She had witnessed something she couldn't quite process. The footage showed her looking towards the direction of the screams, her face full of confusion. Her testimony was crucial. She described a 4-door white vehicle with plastic wrap over the front passenger side window, possibly from a previous accident. In the front passenger seat, she saw a woman with dark braided hair being pulled backward by an unseen assailant. The witness descriptions matched the audio. The suspect, a black male, was heard frantically apologizing, his voice tense and desperate. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." The victim, described as a black female, was clearly in distress. As detectives scoured the area and reviewed missing persons reports, they were met with a flood of tips. However, identifying the woman from the chilling audio proved difficult. There were several missing people in the area, but none of their circumstances or descriptions seemed to match the specifics of this incident. The LAPD worked tirelessly, comparing witness testimony to their database, hoping to find a match that could lead them to the woman's identity. The public was urged to help, with the LAPD releasing multiple statements and updates, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation. The lack of clear leads was frustrating, but the urgency never wavered. News segments ran the story repeatedly, the haunting screams playing on a loop. As the investigation continued, the LAPD made it clear that they were considering all possibilities. Was it a kidnapping? A domestic incident gone horribly wrong? Or something else entirely? Some have speculated that the incident may have been a hoax, but most believe that there is no evidence to indicate that. To this day, no answers have ever been found. Any information about the incident can be directed to LAPD Southwest Division detectives at 213-485-2197. Number 13. Rachel Morin. The sun was setting as Rachel Morin, a mother of 5, set out on Bel Air, Maryland's Ma and Pa hiking trail on August 5, 2023. The trail was familiar to Rachel, but that evening, even after twilight fell, Rachel did not return home. Her mother, Patty Morin, felt uneasy when Rachel didn't come back by nightfall. The trail was supposed to be safe, a place where people walked their dogs and families enjoyed weekend hikes. The next morning, as concern grew, a search party was assembled. It was then that Rachel's naked and battered body was discovered in a dimly lit tunnel along the trail. The scene was horrific, the brutality of the attack unheard of in the small community. 6 months later, the case remained unsolved. Hartford police, in a desperate bid to break the case, released a sketch of the suspected killer. The image was haunting, a face that could belong to anyone. They urged residents to look closely, to remember any detail that might lead to the identification of the murderer. The investigation had been relentless. Detectives uncovered that Rachel's killer might have been lurking around the trail in the days leading up to her murder. Witnesses recalled spotting a man near the path Rachel had taken. His presence, they said, was inexplicably unsettling. It turned out that gut feeling was correct. He was a predator, stalking his prey. Further complicating the case, through the crime scene's DNA evidence, Rachel's killer was linked to a home invasion and assault across the country in Los Angeles earlier that year. Another unsolved case. Doorbell cam footage from the California incident showed a man leaving the property, his face captured clearly. This footage was turned into posters and distributed to schools and homes in Los Angeles. Hartford County Sheriff Jeff Gawler told reporters, "Someone out there knows who this man is. We need this video in front of that person. He will kill again." Distributing the sketches and posters was a race against time. Rachel's family, devastated by their loss, tirelessly campaigned for justice. They sent letters to high schools, hoping a teacher or a former classmate might recognize the man in the footage. They distributed thousands of flyers near the Los Angeles crime scene, hoping to jog someone's memory. Despite the geographical distance, The link between the two crimes is undeniable beyond the DNA match. The method, the brutality, the randomness, all of this points to a single, dangerous individual. But the $30,000 reward offered for information leading to an arrest remains unclaimed. The sketch, the doorbell cam footage, the DNA link, all of this evidence has yet to come together. In Bel Air, Maryland, the memory of Rachel Morin lives on, with the community united in grief, awaiting the day her killer is finally found and brought to justice. Any information regarding Rachel Morin's case can be directed to the Harford County Sheriff's Office at 410-836-7788. Number 12. Geelong Night Stalker. For 3 months, Geelong, a small town just south of Melbourne, Australia, had been suffering from terror and paranoia. For the past 3 months, the once peaceful streets had been prowled by an unsettling figure the locals dubbed the Night Stalker. By many accounts, his presence was felt more than seen. No one knew his purpose. The Night Stalker never stole anything, nor did he damage property. Yet his mere presence was enough to prompt residents to look over their shoulders. A shadow in the night, he crept through the town and lurked in shadows, unsettling locals. He was captured numerous times on doorbell cameras, wearing a mask that obscured half his face. But who was he? It was in the suburb of Werribee that the first significant breakthrough came. Scott Holbrook, a security professional from nearby Rippleside, had invested in a high-tech night vision camera after hearing rumors of the Night Stalker's activities. One night, his precaution paid off. The camera captured footage of a man, his face unmasked, testing the locks of several properties. Scott couldn't believe his eyes when he reviewed the footage. Reported by the Daily Star, he told reporters, "He seems to be snooping. He moves around quite nonchalantly with his hands behind his back." The footage showed a man in his late 30s who could easily blend into a crowd. He had a casual demeanor, moving with purpose but without urgency. What was unusual about this footage was that it captured him without the mask that usually helped obfuscate his identity. The revelation sent waves of both relief and renewed fear through the community. Relief that they finally had a face to associate with the terror, and fear because now it was clear this man was meticulous, calculating, and deliberate in his actions. And still, his identity remained unknown. Former FBI profiler Mike King weighed in on the situation, saying the suspect was likely preparing to commit a more serious crime than trespassing or peeping. He wasn't a random prowler. He was a predator, systematically scoping out the area, possibly looking for weaknesses, or worse, his next victim. The profiler's analysis confirmed what many had feared. The Night Stalker was likely to escalate. Another piece of Night Stalker footage, however, provided a moment of unexpected levity. In the dead of night, as the Night Stalker crept up a driveway, he was unceremoniously chased off by a small but fierce dog. The grainy video showed him bolting, his fearsome facade shattered by a tiny pup. This clip, while amusing, ultimately did little to quell the underlying fear in the community. The Night Stalker's invasion of privacy is deeply disturbing, and his motive remains unknown. Local police have been inundated with tips following the release of the doorbell camera footage. They have scoured through the information, hoping to find clues to the Night Stalker's identity and intentions. Victoria police have assured the public they are taking the matter seriously, but so far, the man remains elusive. Though there has been little news of the Night Stalker lately, the residents of Geelong find themselves living in a state of heightened vigilance. Every creak in the night, every shadow passing by a window could be him. And with each passing day, the idea that he might escalate still hangs heavy in the air. In the quiet of Geelong, the silence is deafening. All eyes watching, all ears listening for the return of the Night Stalker. Any information about the identity of this suspect can be directed to Crime Stoppers at 1800-333-000. Number 11. Elizabeth Barraza Case. Elizabeth Barraza's final morning in Tomball, Texas, began with excitement. In the early hours of January 25, 2019, Elizabeth was busy setting up a garage sale outside her home, hoping to earn some extra money for an upcoming trip to celebrate her wedding anniversary. As Elizabeth arranged items on tables, the normalcy was shattered when an unexpected visitor approached around 7 a.m. The Barraza's doorbell camera, as well as the security camera on a neighbor's house, captured every moment leading up to the tragedy. Prior to the visitor's arrival, the footage showed Elizabeth standing in her driveway, chatting casually with her husband Sergio as he left for work. He kissed her goodbye, not knowing it would be for the last time. Minutes after Sergio drove away, a figure dressed in a long dark coat appeared, walking purposefully towards Elizabeth. The footage suggested that the suspect was wearing a mask, suggesting something sinister was about to happen. Elizabeth greeted the stranger, likely assuming they were an early customer. But in a matter of seconds, the suspect acted. The figure raised a gun, aiming directly at Elizabeth. She seemed to freeze in shock and confusion as she tried to comprehend what was happening. The attacker fired multiple shots at close range, leaving Elizabeth to collapse to the ground. The figure then fled, disappearing as quickly as they had arrived. The camera footage captured it all: the approach, the abrupt violence, and the cold departure, including the suspect's car speeding off. The brutal act was over in less than a minute. Hearing the gunfire, neighbors rushed to the scene. They found Elizabeth lying in her driveway, fighting for her life. Emergency services were called, and she was swiftly transported to the hospital. Despite the efforts of the medical team, Elizabeth succumbed to her injuries later that day. The investigation began immediately. The doorbell footage and the footage from the neighbor's camera were crucial pieces of evidence, providing a clear view of the crime. Detectives examined every frame, hoping to uncover any clue that might lead them to the masked suspect. The footage, however, offered little in terms of identifying the murderer. Police released this footage to the public, with the hope that someone might recognize the attacker's gait, clothing, or any other detail. Tips poured in, but none led to a definitive breakthrough. The masked figure remained exactly that: masked. Speculation swirled. Some suggested it was a robbery gone wrong. Others believed it was a targeted attack. But Elizabeth's life held no apparent dark secrets, no known enemies that could explain such a calculated act of violence. The randomness was perhaps the most terrifying aspect of it all. Elizabeth Barraza's murder remains frustratingly unsolved. The search for answers continues. Any information regarding Elizabeth's case may be directed to 713-222-TIPS 8477. Number 10. Scott Radigan. On a chilly January evening in 2020, the town of Ballston in Virginia was plunged into a mystery that would grip the community for years. Scott Radigan, a 24-year-old software engineer, was found unresponsive in his bedroom at his AVA Ballston Square apartment on the evening of January 17. The events of that evening would turn a routine welfare check into a chilling unsolved murder case. The previous day for Scott had been ordinary by all accounts. He had gone to work as usual and had a few casual interactions, but when his family hadn't heard from him and couldn't reach him by phone, they grew concerned. By 5:30 p.m., a worried relative decided to check on Scott in person. The doorbell camera footage captured the relative's arrival. They pressed the doorbell, knocked loudly, and finally used their key to enter the apartment. Inside, they were met with an overwhelming smell of bleach. Pushing open Scott's bedroom door, their worst fears were realized. Scott lay on the floor, his upper body bloodied and showing signs of severe trauma. Panic-stricken, his relative dialed 911 to report the situation. When the paramedics arrived, it was already too late. Scott was pronounced dead by first responders. As detectives from the Arlington County Police Department arrived, the gravity of the situation became apparent. The strong smell of bleach suggested a frantic attempt to clean up the crime scene. Forensic evidence indicated that the perpetrator had tried, unsuccessfully, to cover their tracks before fleeing. Blood spatter was still present at the scene. The doorbell camera footage became a focal point of the investigation. It showed Scott's relative's arrival, but more importantly, it captured a figure leaving the building around the estimated time of the murder. The footage was grainy, and the person's features were obscured with a mask and hood, but the details were clear enough to provide a crucial lead. The individual was a white male, approximately 5'6" to 5'8", weighing between 150 to 175 pounds. He was dressed in all black, carrying a black backpack, and had a distinctive pigeon-toed gait. This person of interest became the central figure in a case that baffled investigators. The footage was released to the public and examined by both law enforcement and online sleuths alike. Detectives hoped that someone might recognize the unusual gait or recall seeing the individual in the vicinity of the apartment complex. The Arlington County Police conducted a thorough investigation, canvassing the area and interviewing neighbors. Despite these efforts, the case grew colder as time passed without any leads. Desperate for answers, the Radigan family offered a $25,000 reward, which they later increased to $50,000 for information leading to an arrest and conviction. But nothing has come of it. Some have theorized that Scott was targeted by someone he knew, while others suggested a random act of violence. But without any further breakthroughs in the case, both theories are, as of yet, unfounded. The search for justice continues, propelled by a community's resolve and the unyielding dedication of friends and family who refuse to let Scott's case be forgotten. Any information regarding Scott's murder can be directed to the Arlington County Police Department's Homicide/Robbery Unit at 703-228-4180. Number 9. Meta Valentine. Meta Valentine was last seen on October 28, 2014. The surveillance footage from that night shows 42-year-old Meta, a choir director and secretary at Deliverance and Praise Church of Worship, walking briskly towards her apartment at the Sycamore Park complex off Old Wilmington Road. She had just attended a community watch meeting and seemed in a hurry to get home. Approaching the complex, she stopped, staring at the parking lot for a few seconds, then broke into a run toward her building. As she turned the corner, a man exited a vehicle in the parking lot and pursued her. The man was later identified by police as Reginald Jamal McDowell, Metta's ex-boyfriend. The next day, Metta was reported missing when she failed to show up for a family event. The Fayetteville Police Department's homicide unit immediately suspected foul play and took over the investigation. Despite the lack of a body, investigators maintained their belief that McDowell was involved. He was initially cooperative with the police, but then he vanished, and with him, so did any hope of finding Metta alive. For years, Metta's family lived in a state of limbo, their hopes of finding their loved one repeatedly dashed. McDowell, a man with a violent past, had a history of terrorizing Metta. In 1999, he kidnapped Metta from her home, along with her then-boyfriend, Kenneth D. Thompson. Thompson was tied up, and locked into the trunk of Metta's car. McDowell was later charged with 2 counts of first-degree kidnapping, 1 count of first-degree burglary, and 1 count of shooting into an occupied vehicle. After serving 10 years of his 15-year sentence in prison, McDowell was released in 2011. As often happens with abusive relationships, Metta and McDowell began seeing each other again after his release, but she ended it once again on October 16, 2014, just 11 days before her disappearance. Then, on February 9, 2024, a breakthrough. Investigators received new information that led to warrants being issued for McDowell's arrest on charges of first-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. Despite the issuance of warrants, McDowell remained elusive. He was believed to be hiding in the New York City area. The police urged McDowell's friends and family to convince him to hand himself over, stressing that he was considered armed and dangerous. Metta's family, who had waited almost a decade for justice, clung to the hope that McDowell would be caught. They remembered Metta as a devoted mother and a source of light and happiness in their lives. Her absence was a void. Only justice could fill it. As the search for McDowell intensified, the police released the surveillance footage to the public, hoping that someone might recognize McDowell and provide a tip that could lead to his capture. The video showed Metta's final moments, the sudden terror as she realized she was being followed, and the desperate sprint for safety that she never reached. The image of McDowell chasing her was grainy but unmistakable. The Fayetteville Police Department has worked tirelessly, following leads and reaching out to law enforcement agencies in New York. The public was reminded of the danger McDowell posed and the importance of bringing him to justice. For Metta Valentine, a woman who had dedicated her life to her family and her faith, justice is long overdue. Her family's grief is compounded by years of uncertainty, but they remain hopeful that McDowell will be found and held accountable. And yet, as of 2024, Reginald McDowell's location remains unknown. Any information regarding Metta Valentine's case or the whereabouts of the suspect can be directed to Detective M. Ballard at 549-7326 or Crime Stoppers at 483-TIPS-8477. Number 8. Machete-wielding lady. On a Friday night in July of 2023, in Anfield, Liverpool, England, Susan Blackburn lay awake in bed with an uneasy feeling she couldn't explain. The night had been almost unnaturally quiet, until a jarring bang downstairs broke through the silence. Like an alarm, her dogs erupted into barks. Susan's heart raced as she climbed out of bed, moving cautiously towards the source of the sound. Her 2 daughters were sound asleep in their rooms. She tiptoed downstairs, the barking dogs following her closely, their ears perked and eyes wide. Susan scanned the rooms downstairs, searching for the source of the noise, but everything seemed in place. Puzzled, she attributed the sound to something mundane, a dropped item, or perhaps a gust of wind knocking something over. She tried to calm the dogs, then returned to bed, willing the disturbance from her mind as she fell back to sleep. It wasn't until the next afternoon, at around 4 p.m., that Susan discovered the true horror of what had happened. She was in the living room when she heard the sound of a car outside. Instinctively, she reached for her phone to check her Ring doorbell app, expecting to see a delivery or a neighbor passing by. But the app wouldn't connect. Frustrated, she tried again, only to see a frozen image, her last recorded video. With a sinking feeling, Susan played the footage. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she watched the scene unfold. The video showed a woman, her face obscured by the hood of her jacket, walking up the driveway. In her hand, she held a large machete. Susan watched in horror as the woman approached the doorbell camera, raising the blade high. With a swift motion, she sliced the camera from its mount, the screen going black immediately after. Susan stared at her phone. The reality of what she had narrowly missed the previous night hit her hard. It was like something out of a horror movie, she later recounted to the press. I just couldn't believe what I had just seen. She recalled the bang she'd heard around midnight, the sound that had jarred her from her sleep. It hadn't been something falling inside the house after all. It had been a stranger doing something much more alarming. Susan shuddered at the thought of what could have happened if she had confronted the intruder. She checked the rest of the house for signs of a break-in, but found nothing amiss. The woman had taken the doorbell camera and vanished into the night. Susan immediately reported the incident to the police. The local neighborhood team responded quickly, identifying the weapon from the footage as a cane machete. A spokesperson from the Merseyside police urged anyone with information about the incident to come forward, emphasizing the importance of community vigilance. As the news spread, neighbors shared their own concerns. The incident left everyone on edge, each wondering if they might be the next target. Susan has installed a new doorbell camera and additional security measures, hoping to restore a semblance of safety to the family home. But the image of the woman with the machete remains vividly in her mind. The machete-wielding lady has never been captured, and her motive remains unknown. Number 7. Hop Newen. In the quiet neighborhood of Lancaster Drive in Grand Prairie, Texas, all seemed still as the clock struck 10:30 p.m. However, evil was brewing. Hop Newen, a 32-year-old man known for his friendly demeanor and sharp wit, was about to vanish without a trace. Hop's white Nissan 350Z convertible was seen driving onto Texas State Highway 161, exiting from Lower Tarrant Road. There was no further footage of the vehicle that night. He had always been punctual and responsible, so when his family realized he hadn't returned home, worry quickly set in. His sister, Jenny Newen, had spent the night pacing the living room, her mind racing to worst-case scenarios. By the morning, their family friend was with her, both of them trying to piece together Hop's last known movements. They decided to review the security footage from the camera outside Hop's front door, hoping it might offer some clue. Jenny clicked through the footage. At first, nothing seemed amiss, but then, as the video progressed to the time just before his disappearance, their hearts sank. The footage showed an unknown figure approaching the front door. The person was deliberately cautious, their face obscured by a hood. The figure placed a piece of paper over the camera, blocking the view. There was a brief moment of muffled sounds, possibly the door being opened, before the screen went dark. The implications were terrifying. Someone had intentionally hidden their identity before entering Hop's home, and now he was gone. Detectives were called in. They combed through the footage, but the obscure figure offered no clear leads. While they hadn't yet confirmed foul play, the evidence pointed to something more sinister than a simple disappearance. Hop's family and friends mobilized, sharing his image across social media. They described him in detail: a 5'7" Vietnamese-American man, weighing about 165 pounds, with brown eyes and short black hair. He had a distinctive scar behind his right ear and a half-sleeve dragon tattoo on his right arm. On his right inner arm, he bore the letters TFT, and he was missing the tip of his right index finger. The community was on high alert, but each lead ended in disappointment. Hop's Nissan 350Z was also missing, adding another obstacle to solving the mystery. The car was later found abandoned, but there was no significant evidence inside that would lead to Hop. Who was the mysterious figure on the camera? What had happened to Hop after that footage cut off? Theories abounded, but there were few answers. The Grand Prairie Police continued their investigation, but as time passed, the case began to grow cold. Hop's family urged anyone with information to come forward, holding on to the belief that somewhere, someone knew something that could help bring Hop back to them. Any information about the case can be directed to the Grand Prairie Police at 972-237-8750. Number 6. Tiffany Valiente. It was a Saturday evening, July 12, 2015, in the small town of Mays Landing, New Jersey. The Valiente household buzzed with the joy of a double graduation celebration. One of the graduates was 18-year-old Tiffany Valiente, a high school volleyball star with a full scholarship to Mercy College. Standing tall at 6'3", Tiffany was a force on the volleyball court and was admired for her talent, work ethic, and friendly nature. Her dreams were ambitious. She aimed for the U.S. Olympics and, beyond that, was considering a career in the Air Force or in law enforcement. As the evening wore on, the festive atmosphere was marred by an argument between Tiffany and her parents. At around 9:30 p.m., the family's security camera captured Tiffany walking down the driveway into the darkness. This was odd, as Tiffany had always been afraid of the dark. Moments later, her cell phone was found abandoned in the grass. Tiffany never went anywhere without her phone. Tiffany's parents began to worry about their daughter's whereabouts. At 2:30 a.m., the Valiente family's worst fears were realized. Police arrived with the devastating news that Tiffany's partially clothed, barefoot body had been discovered 4 miles away on a desolate stretch of railroad track near mile marker 45. Her body was mangled, the result of a collision with a train. At the scene, they also found an axe with red markings. Despite this finding, the authorities quickly ruled her death a suicide, citing her struggles with her sexual identity as a possible motive. The Valiente family was in shock. The official narrative, that Tiffany had walked barefoot through 4 miles of unlit, remote woods to throw herself in front of an unscheduled train, seemed not only improbable, but absurd. Her fear of the dark made the notion unthinkable. Determined to uncover the truth, the Valientes enlisted the help of experts who examined the case pro bono. They found significant gaps in the investigation. No family members had been interviewed. No psychological autopsy had been conducted to support this theory, and no rape kit had been performed. Critical evidence from the scene had been mishandled, with some items left behind and others stored so carelessly that they became unusable for DNA testing. Adding to the mystery was the footage from the Valiente's doorbell camera. The grainy video showed Tiffany's last known moments, walking away from her home into the pitch-black night. Things simply didn't add up. Tiffany had had numerous plans for her future. She was scheduled to go to Great Adventure Park the next day, and she was planning to pick up a kitten for her mom's birthday at the end of the month. Her college going-away party was already in the works, and she was excited about starting her college journey. The family argued that these were not the actions of someone planning to take their own life. The Valientes were determined to change the manner of death from to unexplained. They believed that if the case were reclassified, it could reopen the investigation and bring them closer to the truth. They were convinced that Tiffany had not walked into the woods by herself that night. Someone had to have been involved, and they were determined to find out who. A $40,000 reward was announced for information leading to the resolution of Tiffany's death. The family's plea was clear. They wanted answers. A star athlete, full of life and potential, lost under the most inexplicable of circumstances. What really happened at mile marker 45? Any information about Tiffany Valiente can be directed to the New Jersey Office of Attorney General, Criminal Division, 800-277-2427. Number 5. K. Alana Turner. The Turner family from Maine had been living in a state of disbelief and despair for 407 long days. Every day, they pleaded on Facebook for any information that might lead them to their missing daughter, K. Alana, who had gone missing in Tomball, Texas. One day, however, their search took a turn. Tim Miller, the resolute founder of Texas EquuSearch, let the anxious family know that human remains had been found by his volunteer search teams. Since the day in March of 2023 that 27-year-old K. Alana disappeared, Texas EquuSearch had been unwavering in their efforts. Miller and his dedicated team had conducted at least 20 exhaustive searches. The area where the remains were ultimately found was dense with weeds and thick woods. K. Alana's last known whereabouts were in Tomball. She had been experiencing a severe mental health crisis. She was seen on multiple Ring doorbell cameras, appearing disoriented and confused. On one, she appeared to believe she'd arrived at her friend's home. She fell asleep in someone's driveway, exhausted and distressed. When deputies attempted to wake her, she panicked, fleeing in her car and driving off erratically until she crashed into a wooden area. Despite the immediate efforts of the police, she exited her vehicle and vanished into the dense forest, leaving behind nothing but a cold trail. For nearly a year, search teams braved the underbrush and the elements, but each day they returned empty-handed. Yet Texas EquuSearch never gave up. Their perseverance was a testament to their commitment to their work, encouraged by the Turner family's unyielding hope. During what was scheduled to be their final search, the team made a grim discovery. The remains, found about 900 feet from where K. Alana's car had last been seen, brought a mix of sorrow and relief to her loved ones. The proximity was a cruel reminder of how close she had been all along, hidden by the unforgiving landscape. The discovery of the remains plunged the family into a new kind of agony. While they had clung to the hope that she might be found alive, the reality of her death was now undeniable. Their focus shifted to finding answers. For the Turners, the past 407 days had been a grueling journey marked by heartache and uncertainty. It ended with a confirmation that their worst fears were realized. Although no foul play was suspected, the mystery of what truly unfolded in the final hours of Kay Alana's life remains. Number 4. Kahira Frazee. On the evening of February 23, 2023, in Beaumont, California, 22-year-old Kahira Frazee, who was 8 months pregnant, sat in a van with her mother and stepfather near the drive-thru of the local Jack in the Box. The three had spent the day together, running errands and preparing for the arrival of Kahira's baby boy, expected in just over a month. It had been a day filled with joy, but that joy turned out to be short-lived. As they approached the fast food restaurant, Kahira asked to get out of the car. Her request was unusual, but her mother, Kara, thought little of it at the time, assuming her daughter needed a break or wanted to stretch her legs. The footage from the Jack in the Box later showed Kahira standing alone, her black jacket and gray sweats blending into the night. Kara and her husband watched her through the car window as they ordered their meal, but when they turned back around, she was gone. Kara's husband jumped out of the car, frantically searching the area around the restaurant. He checked behind bushes, looked down side streets, calling out her name, but there was no response. Their panic rose, and the couple quickly called 911 to report their daughter missing. The Beaumont Police Department initially declared her a voluntary missing person due to her age. For weeks, the family was left in the dark. Kahira's loved ones searched for leads, but there was no sign of the pregnant woman. As investigators pieced together the events of that night, doorbell camera footage from nearby businesses provided a crucial clue. The grainy images showed Kahira walking away from the Jack in the Box, heading south behind a row of businesses. The footage revealed her walking alone, with no sign of distress, which was strange as she was excited about her pregnancy and had no discernible reason to walk away from her life. Kara clung to hope, believing that someone had taken her daughter in and was caring for her and her unborn child. "I believe that she's going to get back home," she told Dateline. "God will make a way for her." Despite the lack of evidence suggesting abduction, Kara's faith remained unshaken. As the investigation continued, detectives delved into Kahira's past, looking for any clues that might explain her sudden disappearance. They interviewed family, friends, and acquaintances, but no theories arose. Security footage later released by the Beaumont Police Department showed Kahira walking behind a charter school next to the Jack in the Box, moments before she disappeared from view. This footage was the last visual confirmation of her whereabouts. Kara and her family refused to give up hope. They raised funds to hire a private investigator and created social media pages dedicated to finding Kahira. The public's interest was piqued, and tips began to pour in, but none led to a definitive breakthrough. Despite the extensive search efforts and the family's unwavering determination, Kahira's fate remains a mystery. The Beaumont Police Department has assured the family that they are pursuing every lead. Yet, without clear evidence of foul play or a solid lead on her whereabouts, the case is at a standstill. As another anniversary of her disappearance approaches, the community continues to rally behind the Frazee family, their collective hope mirroring Kara's own. A family yearning for answers, and a mother still waiting for her daughter's return. Any information regarding Kahira Frize's disappearance can be directed to the Beaumont Police Department at 951-769-8500. Number 3. Sandra Birchmore. Sandra Birchmore, a young teacher's aide, barely 23 and newly pregnant, was found lifeless in her apartment in February of 2021. The medical examiner's verdict. But as investigators dug deeper, questions began to emerge. The last person to see Sandra alive was a police officer, a figure of trust and authority in the community. In doorbell camera footage from the main entrance, Sandra is seen entering her apartment building. She takes the elevator and returns downstairs with a snow brush, presumably to clean her car off. She returns and heads back upstairs via the elevator while looking at her phone. A few hours later, a man arrives with a mask on, his hood up. This visitor was later identified as Matthew Farwell, a police officer known to Sandra. In the footage, he keeps his face low. About 30 minutes later, he is seen leaving again through the main entrance. But his encounter with Sandra wasn't just a routine visit. He, along with his twin brother and another officer, had known Sandra since she was just a teenager. Their paths intertwined through the Explorer program, a support program where Sandra sought direction amidst a tumultuous adolescence. What started as mentorship veered into something sinister. The officers, guardians of the law, breached the boundaries of trust, engaging in illicit relationships with Sandra when she was just a vulnerable teenager. The revelation of this behavior sent shockwaves through the town, igniting protests and demands for justice. As the investigation unfolded, a pattern of abuse emerged, embedded within the very institutions meant to protect the community's most vulnerable. The Explorer program, once a model organization, stood tainted by reports of the abuse perpetrated by its mentors. Allegations surfaced spanning decades, affecting franchises of the organization representing the breadth of the nation. It wasn't an isolated incident, but a systemic failure. The voices of the victims echoed through the corridors of power, demanding accountability and restitution. But the officers in question have denied any wrongdoing in Sandra's case. Federal authorities are now looking into her death. Number 2. Johnny Cashman. In the quiet town of Lynchburg, Virginia, a family from Maine found themselves drowning in a nightmare. Grappling with the sudden and mysterious death of their beloved son and brother, Johnny, the Cashmans were desperate for answers. When Johnny was found deceased, the authorities had swiftly concluded that his death was due to a medical condition, a diagnosis that left the Cashmans reeling. With heavy hearts, they had Johnny cremated, trusting the police's assessment of his passing. But Johnny's sister Sarah's world shattered when she stumbled upon a shocking revelation that challenged the official narrative. The discovery was hidden in pictures and surveillance footage that painted a vastly different picture of Johnny's final moments. He is seen on his neighbor's Ring doorbell footage entering his apartment. A while later, a voice, presumably Cashman's, is heard saying, "What are you doing, man?" He says, "Stop, please." A struggle can be heard. And then, a strange man is seen leaving Cashman's apartment. After getting to the bottom of the stairs, he turns around and returns to Johnny's doorstep, checking the door. He appears to be wiping his fingerprints off of the doorknob. As Sarah delved deeper into the events leading up to her brother's demise, she uncovered a trail of negligence and oversight by official investigations. The family was assured there was no sign of foul play, no indication of violence or malice in Johnny's untimely passing. But this evidence, along with blood spatter evident on the walls at the scene of Johnny's death, suggests otherwise. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah has refused to accept the explanations offered by the authorities. She has reached out to anyone who will listen, leaving no stone unturned. Her pleas have fallen on deaf ears as the authorities remain tight-lipped, unwilling or unable to provide the closure the Cashmans so desperately seek. And so, the mystery of what happened to her brother remains. Any information regarding Johnny Cashman's case can be directed to Detective Doobie at 434-455-6102. Number 1. Serenity Denard. The cold morning of February 3rd, 2019, dawned crisp and clear in the Black Hills of South Dakota at the Children's Home Society, where 9-year-old Serenity Denard lived due to mental health challenges. Serenity was known for her adventurous spirit and infectious smile, a young girl who brought light to those around her despite her tumultuous past. That morning, Serenity was playing in the gym with other children. Her caretakers, as usual, kept a watchful eye, but in the chaos of activity, Serenity saw an opportunity. She slipped out of the building unnoticed, blending into the sprawling, wooded surroundings. The staff realized Serenity was missing just minutes after she left, and immediately launched a search. Panic set in as they scoured the grounds, calling her name, but to no avail. Despite the cold, Serenity had ventured outside without a coat, heightening the urgency of the search. Every minute that passed felt like it could be death. Temperatures plummeted into the night. The community came together to search, driven by a shared hope of finding the little girl before it was too late. The Black Hills posed significant challenges. The dense forest and rugged terrain created numerous hiding places and obstacles. Time lapsed, and hope faded with each passing hour, and then with each passing day. Serenity's guardians and loved ones pleaded for information, but none came. The story of Serenity Denard's disappearance spread, drawing national attention, with experts offering theories and volunteers arriving from different states to join the search. Yet despite the massive effort, Serenity remained missing. And then, in November of 2019, doorbell camera footage was released. A young girl arriving at a stranger's doorstep, pleading for help. Could it be Serenity? For a moment, hope sprung. The likeness made some think it might be the missing girl. But Serenity's own family disputed this notion. They viewed the footage and said, unfortunately, it isn't her. The girl in this footage was never identified or found either, leading to a whole new mystery that, too, remains unsolved. The Children's Home Society and the community continue to honor Serenity's memory, holding vigils and fundraisers to support search efforts. Her room at the home has been kept as it was, a reminder of the little girl who vanished into the woods. Any information about Serenity's case can be directed to the Pennington County Sheriff's Office at 605-394-6115.